Testing, testing. Good morning. Welcome to the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for March 22nd, 2023. Just a note for our regular practitioners, there's going to be a policy change in the building facilities going forward in terms of security. All non-state employees going forward after today will need to subject themselves to a metal detector check as well as an x-ray of all of your packaging. So just FYI for those that will be visiting us in the future. With that, we have administrative meeting minutes to approve from our last meeting on March 15th. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. There's one item on today's consent agenda. It is a joint application for change in an indirect control from Point Broadband Holdings LLC and BP Broadband Aggregator LP.
Thank you. I would move that we note the transfer of control. The vote begins with Commissioner Mubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton?
Aye.
Commissioner Richard?
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Item number 2 on the administrative agenda is a request from Potomac Electric Power Company for an extension of a project operational deadline.
Thank you. Good morning to our staff. Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. John Borkowski for staff. The Commission approved PEPCO's Livingston Road Energy Storage Project, formerly called National Harbor, on November 6, 2020, with an operational start date of February 28, 2022. Subsequently, the Commission approved 2 different extension requests for the operational start date of the project, with the current approved operational start date set to expire on April 30th, 2023. The company is now requesting another extension and is seeking a revised operational start date of June 30th, 2024 due to delays caused by its vendor, which are described in detail in both the company's filing and staff's buck sheet. The last calculated benefit cost ratio by the company for the project was 1.77, and at the time of this filing, PEPCO has not finalized its agreements with its new vendors and therefore cannot provide incremental costs attributable to the project delays. PEPCO does anticipate that some impact will occur to the project's benefit cost ratio as a result of these project challenges, but still expects the benefit cost ratio to remain positive. PEPCO has assured staff that once it has finalized its agreements, the company will update staff. Staff still views PEPCO's Livingston Road project as a viable project that can provide capacity deferral benefits to the electric grid, as well as knowledge and experience that will be useful for future energy storage projects. Should the Commission not approve the company's request, the total stranded cost for the project is estimated at approximately $3.3 million, which is 52% of the total current project budget of $6.3 million. Staff recommends the Commission approve PEPCO's proposed revision to June 30, 2024 for the project's operational start date for good cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski. We'll turn to Maryland Office of People's Counsel.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Molly Woods, Assistant People's Counsel for the Office of People's Counsel. It's a pleasure to be before you for the first time this morning. As noted, OPC filed comments on PEPCO's request, and I won't repeat them in their entirety here. We have since spoken with staff and PEPCO's counsel and want to just make 3 brief points. First, OPC continues to generally be supportive of the energy storage pilot projects moving forward pursuant to the statute. Second, OPC agrees with staff that PEPCO has demonstrated that the poor performance of its contractor resulted in unanticipated development delays and that there is good cause for the Commission to grant an extension request in light of the corrective actions the company has taken to mitigate the impacts and the potential for substantial stranded costs if the extension is not approved. Third, however, as PEPCO itself identifies in its filing, the company is currently unable to provide information on any potential project cost increase that may result from the selection of a new vendor, and therefore cannot calculate the impact on the project's benefit cost ratio. except to clarify that the company does not expect that remaining contingency funding will be sufficient to cover the full incremental cost as staff initially expected, and that there will be some impact on overall project budget. OPC recognizes that costs are not the only consideration for these projects and that there is value to ratepayers from the lessons that will be learned from the pilot. But costs do ultimately matter to ratepayers, which the Commission recognized in the initial order approving these projects. Because costs are an important consideration, we're concerned that neither the Commission nor OPC can adequately address this consideration without any idea of what it will cost to get the project to operational status. And we're concerned that approving the extension without knowing at all what it will cost may send a signal that cost is not an issue at all for these projects. For these reasons, OPC's initial recommendation is that the Commission delay consideration of PEPCO's request until such time as PEPCO is able to, 1, provide an estimate of the incremental cost associated with the delay, 2, demonstrate that the project will remain cost-effective, and 3, establish the impact on the remaining contingency funding. From PEPCO's counsel, we understand that the company does not anticipate being able to provide this information until after the current operational deadline of April 30th, but we think it would be reasonable for the Commission to require the company to provide an estimate of these costs prior to their upcoming deadline. If, however, the Commission determines that delay is not a feasible option, then we would ask the Commission to condition its approval in 2 ways. 1, requiring that PEPCO make an updated filing to disclose the estimated incremental cost and its impact on any remaining contingency funding and the benefit cost ratio as soon as it can be determined. And 2, making clear that the Commission's approval of the extension request in no way constitutes pre-approval of the associated costs by explicitly stating that any costs that exceed remaining contingency funds may be subject to disallowance in a future rate case proceeding. Thank you for your consideration of our comments, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. To your very last point there, doesn't the Commission, and welcome to practice before the Public Service Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To that last point, does not the Commission always have and reserves the right to disallow costs in a future rate case?
Absolutely, we would agree with that point. We still think it would be useful for the Commission to make explicit in this approval that the approval of the extension request itself is not in any way a pre-approval of the related costs. It sends a signal to the company that this is not an unending stream of revenue.
That's a good response. We'll get back to you with more questions in a moment. We'll hear from Mr. Seegers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seegers, appearing for PEPCO. Appearing with me is our project manager for the Livingston Road Battery Project, Mr. Bob Andrikaitis. I would first like to begin by saying that the company very much regrets having to come before you for a third extension with this project. This is not where we want to be with this project. I would like to provide some updates because I do believe it's important for the Commission to know that we are doing everything that we can to get this project back on track. The first of which is that PEPCO has identified a new vendor, who is Concentric, for completing the remaining substation, electrical engineering, and the construction activities associated with the Livingston Road project. They will also operate the battery once it's completed and be responsible for bidding the battery into the PJM market. Concentric, by the way, is the current vendor for the Delmarva Power Ocean City battery project. We are currently in the contracting stage with Concentric, and we're developing the necessary scope of work, and we expect that the contracting process will be complete by the end of next month. In developing the scope of work for our new vendor, we are working with our previous vendor, AF Mensa, in order to secure delivery of the major material that AF Mensa has either received or is in the process of receiving. This includes the batteries for the project, the transformers, and the switchgear, and we hope to receive all of these no later than July of this year, 2023. Third, as indicated in our extension request and in staff's buck sheet, the company has retained the local firm of Dewberry to complete the civil engineering and the permitting necessary for the project. And this is the aspect of the project that has, at this point, the largest time commitment. In a recent development, as recent as this past Monday, the waiver that Pepco had submitted to the Department of Permitting, Inspections, and Enforcement for Prince George's County, or DPI for short, was granted for a number of the frontage improvements that DPI had originally requested. This sets a clear path forward for the remaining civil design and subsequent permits, and therefore we expect to receive the remaining permits no later than September of this year. One minor correction I would like to note on staff's buck sheet, and Ms. Woods did include this in her opening comments, was that we do not expect that the originally identified contingency funding will be enough to cover any incremental costs for this project. So I just want to make sure that the commission was clear on that. And in response to OPC's comments, because Pepco will likely not know the amount of any incremental cost associated with changing our vendor until after the current operational deadline of the end of next month, there's not really much justification in delaying the consideration of our waiver request until the additional cost is provided. Moreover, OPC in their comments, they noted that the project should remain cost beneficial, and while that certainly is preferable, I would note that there is no requirement in the statute that the project has to be cost beneficial. In fact, I believe that was a point that the chairman himself made at the July 13th, 2020 hearing when the commission originally considered these projects. And I would also note that our Elk Neck project for Delmarva Power, which is currently in operation, that never measured out as cost beneficial. As to OPC's alternate recommendations, the company does not object to filing an update with staff and the commission with the estimated incremental cost of the project once that is known. We, in fact, we agreed and committed to do that as part of our extension request. And Mr. Chairman, I think you beat me to my final point concerning the cost recovery language. The company does not believe that any approval of these projects is a signal by the commission that the costs are, that we automatically get recovery of the costs. The company understands that we have to come in with a rate case and demonstrate that all of our costs, not just the incremental costs, would be prudent. And so we just don't believe that OPC's last recommendation is necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Seegers. It's unfortunate that your contractor sounds like has run into either delays or inability to execute, necessitating this third extension request. Concentric, are they a diverse supplier?
Yes, they are, Your Honor.
And AF Mensa is a diverse supplier.
That's correct.
Who currently has custody of the batteries and the switchgear?
AF Mensa has the AF Mensa has custody of the batteries. One battery is currently in Florida, and the other is in Laurel, Maryland. Regarding the switchgear, is that okay? The switchgear and the transformer is currently with the manufacturer. It is basically done. It just needs to be shipped. So, and we are currently working with AF Mensa to secure all of that equipment, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there going to be any trouble securing that equipment?
We certainly hope not, Your Honor. As I mentioned before, we are currently negotiating with AF Mensa in an effort to get those as quickly as possible. We certainly hope there will be no trouble, Your Honor.
AF Mensa is not present today, are they?
I don't believe they are, Your Honor.
And you just stated, but just to reiterate what Mr. Borkowski said and what Ms. Woods was advocating for, as soon as these cost estimates are available, perhaps as early as May 1st after the contract with Concentric is executed, you'll be sharing that data?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. I turn to my colleagues. Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you, everybody. That's helpful. When this is for Pepco, when the failed vendor noted that they need $2 million more, did they provide to complete the project? Did they provide any itemized information on how they came up with $2 million?
I don't believe they did, Your Honor, no. And in any case, an additional cost of $2 million, as we noted in our extension filing, was wholly unacceptable to us. We very much agree with OPC that cost is an issue with these projects, and we want to manage those the best we can.
Just a couple other questions. Is the contract with Dewberry completed? Because I think the filing said it would be by the end of this month.
It's executed, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Did MEA provide any comments? I noticed in the staff box she didn't notice the PUA language says comments from MEA might be considered.
I have not seen any, Your Honor.
Okay.
I don't believe MEA
I
is
didn't
here
see any.
today.
Okay. And just a follow-up question from some previous conversations we've had about the county and neighbors associated with this. So can you just, it sounds like maybe your relationship with the county is good, but if you can just maybe elaborate.
Sure. I can bring up Mr. Andrikaitis to update the commission on our community outreach.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. Bob Andrikaitis for Pepco Project Management. In response to your question, since our last hearing, we have been engaging with the community on a regular basis. We have continued to have community advisory group meetings. Our last one occurred in December, at which time we presented our emergency operating plan. That was pretty well received, but we agreed to continue to have a dialogue with the community and actually take that plan and then simplify it so it's more understandable to the community at large. It's very technical in nature, so we want to make sure it was understood by everyone that needs to, be aware of the situation and our response to an emergency. So we're currently working on that. We haven't set a date yet for our next formal community meeting, but we're anticipating that would happen sometime in April. And then after that, when we get closer towards the start of construction, we're going to have a more of an open house. We'll have a larger opportunity for community members, like anyone that would want to attend, to come ask questions. We are actually in the process of creating a scale model of the battery and how it sits on the site to provide some perspective to the community to help with their understanding of how this all fits in with their neighborhood.
Good. Very good. I think that's it, and appreciate that you would update the commission when you have better information on cost.
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brokowski, thank you for your presentation. I just want to understand a couple things. This is a pilot. Can you remind me which model of the four models does this one fit? Is this the company-owned?
This is the utility-owned and third-party operated. As Mr. Seegers mentioned, the vendor is going to be responsible for the operation and maintenance of the project as well as the wholesale market participation.
Okay, and I think as you indicated, but just reaffirm for me that you feel comfortable with the company's management of the project up to date, despite the problems with their vendor. Again, I'm kind of looking at this from a ratepayer angle. Has appropriate protections been considered as we're looking at company management?
Well, obviously, both staff and all the other parties would like to have a smooth project, but we recognize that this is a pilot and you're learning lessons in a pilot. This is the first time Pepco's tried to deploy this technology, so I chalk it up to getting that experience, and that's one of the reasons why you perform a pilot.
Okay, and we had hearings on this a couple of years ago, and I've been very supportive of these pilots, these different models. But at this point in time, do you believe, and I think you've asserted this, but there are still things we can learn? It just seems like a lot of time has passed already, and more time will pass. Right. Are we still really in a pilot phase of trying to understand the technology being used and how it's going to be deployed at this site?
I believe so. I know we do have some statute requirements, and the pilot, I think, extends through the end of 2026. So if the project can maintain its current schedule, I think we'll have a good 2 years of learnings from this project.
Okay. And then the OPC, do you have any reaction? Again, I understand the stranded costs, and this is a pilot, so there's some, I guess, leeway as far as the cost effectiveness, but still, are we potentially looking at just a sunk cost fallacy here if we just continue to move forward? Do you have some confidence that we should be continuing to spend money?
Well, some cost is certainly a big consideration, but I'm also heartened by the statements of the company that they still expect to have a positive benefit cost. So that gives me some comfort. Of course, we won't know that for sure until we see an update from the company on the cost, which presumably will not happen until May at the earliest.
Okay, thank you. And then just one, I guess, for the company, Mr. Seegers. So it sounds like you're comfortable now that with this new vendor, as far as cost, but you don't feel like you're in a position today to give us any kind of estimates based on those conversations with your vendor that you've secured?
Unfortunately, no, Your Honor. One aspect is that we are trying to determine which pieces of equipment we can get from our current vendor, just to see if there's anything else that we're going to have to reorder. As I indicated with Chairman Stanek, that certainly is our hope is that we're going to be able to get everything from our vendor. I will note, in terms of the cost-benefit analysis, I will say that this project is still deferring a new substation at National Harbor. And the cost of that, we feel, we're fairly confident, is going to far exceed any incremental cost associated with this project. That's why we're able to say that while we may not know the exact impact on the cost-benefit analysis, we still believe that it is going to be positive.
Okay. And then I guess the last question really is just about your interactions with the county and DPI. Did you anticipate some of these additional requirements that the county was going to impose in your original assessment? And that is just the beautification of the site, the aesthetics of the site, the widening of the road, all kinds of different things that now DPI is requiring. Was that anticipated? And do you have a handle on those costs as far as going forward? Do you have any other expectations that they could balloon?
I think I'm going to bring up Mr. Andrikaitis, who is a lot closer to that process, Your Honor, in order to answer that.
Okay, yeah. And I just asked because this is my neck of the woods, so I'm very familiar. I drive by there on my way to Home Depot, so I know that road. So.
Sure. Good morning again. So in response to your question, previously AF Mensa was also responsible for the permitting aspects. So this was one of the reasons we decided to end the relationship with them, because they did not make us aware of those aspects. And it wasn't until we engaged with Dewberry, who is a vendor that we use regularly, that we became aware of these additional permitting requirements. So it was a factor in our decision-making process to terminate our relationship. So it became new information to us, and thus kind of gave us some concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those of us who lived in Prince George's County have all dealt with DPI at one point or another, anything we do. So I imagine the company deals with them quite a bit. So
Yes.
do you think the vendor's on the right track? Because again,
Definitely. I think once we brought Dewberry into the project and with their expertise, it's definitely made a huge difference, and we're definitely on the right track now with DPI.
okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Just a quick question for the company, and then maybe one or two for the Office of People's Counsel. First, to the company, OPC is, as you know, they requested that we delay your approval or consideration of the extension request until you provide some additional information about any additional costs. What's the practical impact to the project if we were to move forward that way?
If the commission was to delay?
Yes, until you have the data.
Well, one aspect is that we would be at risk of going beyond the current operational deadline of the end of next month. As I indicated before, we don't know if we're going to have that information before the end of next month. So in terms of like the practical effect, we're still going to keep moving forward with the project. And so I'm not sure. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Linton?
I'm just trying to understand if there's an impact. You're suggesting to me that the company's going to still move forward, so it doesn't appear as though that there is an impact beyond just the issue of the moving beyond the date that you have for operational authority currently. There is anything else?
I don't believe so, Your Honor. It's just that I would reiterate that once we update the commission with the updated costs, the company does not believe that any grant of an extension is pre-approval of those costs. So again, it comes back to what is the justification for the delay if unless the commission was going to base its extension upon whether or not there's going to be a cost increase.
Okay. All right, so thank you. Just a quick question for the Office of People's Counsel. I'm doing honor to Commissioner O'Donnell, who's not here today, since this is your first time. So you've proposed that we wait until we receive some additional information from the company. When we receive the information, what should we do with it?
Thank you, Commissioner. I think it would be appropriate for the commission to review the costs, to understand what those incremental costs are, what the impact is on any remaining contingency funding. Again, right now, we know that the company doesn't expect that there is enough contingency funding to cover this potential cost overrun, but we really have no idea how much that cost overrun would be. And to also be able to understand what the impact will be on the project's benefit cost ratio. Because again, I mean, while we agree there's substantial benefit to deferring a substation, and there's a potential that this project could certainly still be cost beneficial, we really have no way to make that determination. And respectfully, the commission has no way to make that determination at this point.
So is there a threshold amount that the People's Counsel is concerned about? So it comes in at a number that's so large that the commission should take some different action, or is it just that, I mean, what should we be concerned about when we receive the information?
That's a great question, and certainly that would be up to the commission. I'm not sure that there's a specific threshold amount. Any cost that will exceed the pre-approved contingency amount will increase the overall budget for the project. And we would need to be able to evaluate, I think both OPC and the commission would ideally be able to evaluate what the impact of that cost overrun is on the BCA. Again, it could be small, and we could still be looking at a very cost beneficial project overall, or as far as we know, it could be extremely large. We appreciate that the company thought the $2 million proposed by AF Mensa was unacceptable. That's the only number we have before us, and frankly, $2 million on a $6.3 million project is a large cost overrun. So I think the point that OPC is making is that we need that information in front of us to be able to evaluate how significant the impact is.
And so process-wise, considering some of the questions that Commissioner Richard just raised earlier regarding the potential of how much time do we have to learn from the pilot, what type of review process are you, as OPC, proposing or expecting once the information is received from the company?
Again, I think we would defer to the commission's direction in that way. Perhaps we could do what has been done in past extensions, where commission staff, OPC, any other interested stakeholders have the opportunity to review the economic analysis that underlies that, and then provide recommendations to the commission. It could be something that could be done potentially without another hearing, if that review could be done kind of on paper as well. But we would defer to the commission's direction in that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Linton. Ms. Woods, you're getting your updated filing from PEPCO with respect to the costs. It sounds like we'll be getting them in a few weeks. Is that right, Mr. Seegers?
Yes, as soon as we complete the contracting, Your Honor.
Okay. And recovery of costs associated with this project will be determined in a future rate case, like they are standard practice here. So with that, I would move that we approve the company's revised operational start date of June 30, 2024, pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7 216, H as in hotel, 6, little 2, for the company's Livingston Road project for good cause shown. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
and Commissioner Richard.
And I vote aye, and also make explicitly clear that this is not my vote is not a pre-approval of those costs, so.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 3 is a waiver request from MCI Metro Access Transmission Service Corp.
Good morning, Mr. Thomas.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Evan Thomas on behalf of staff. On February 10th, 2023, MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation, doing business as Verizon Access Transmission Services Corporation, submitted a request for a waiver to override the North American Numbering Plan Administrator's denial of an application for 7 numbering blocks in the Essex, Maryland Rate Center. The numbers were requested for Verizon Access's client, MedStar Health, and would be used in MedStar's expansion of the Franklin Square Medical Center. The denial was based on Verizon Access's inability to meet the required metrics that would permit the North American Numbering Plan administrators to release the requested numbers to Verizon Access. Title 47 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 52.15, subsection G5, grants the Commission authority to override denials of numbering services if sufficient need is shown. In this case, staff believes that the expansion of MedStar's Franklin Square Medical Center constitutes sufficient need. Staff recommends the Commission grant a waiver for MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation to obtain the requested 7,000 blocks from the North American Plan Administrator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We'll turn to counsel for MCI Metro Access Transmission Service Corporation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Doug Smith, Vice President, State Government Affairs for Verizon, representing the company on this filing. We support staff's recommendation and ask for your approval of this waiver. Their comments and their summary was excellent. The only thing I might note is that the uniqueness of this waiver is that there were 7,000 numbers requested by MedStar in sequential order, which is a unique and very large request. That 7,000 numbers are going to be used for telemetry and imagery purposes in the medical field, which allows for MRIs, CAT scans, body scans, x-rays to be transmitted over voice over IP technology, which is somewhat unique, but certainly, again, this application, we do ask for your approval and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you for that additional detail. I imagine it's additional burden to have a sequential batch of numbers, much less 7,000 of them. Seeing no questions, I would move that we grant the company a waiver to obtain the requested 7,000 blocks from the North American Numbering Plan Administrator. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye, and this sounds very exciting to be able to have this type of treatment available. Thank you.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye, and I'm happy to know none of these numbers will call my cell phone.
And I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 4 consists of revised standard offer service bid plans from Pepco and Potomac Edison.
Good morning, Mr. Spivak.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is a filing by staff supplementing the procurement improvement process filing of last August. At the request of the parties in the August filing, the Commission approved modified SOS bid plans for Potomac Electric Power Company and Potomac Edison, intended to address the possibility that a Montgomery County Community Choice Aggregation Program, or CCA, would start on or after October 1st, 2024. The effect of those modified bid plans was to postpone or eliminate some of the normal purchase of SOS power for those service territories for after October 1st, 2024, in light of the uncertainty regarding the start date of the CCA. Montgomery County has since determined that the CCA will not start up until October 1st, 2025 or later, so a minimum of a 1-year delay, creating a need for the power purchases that were previously postponed. Accordingly, Pepco and PE prepared the revised bid plans currently before the Commission to enable the purchase of the additional power in the April and June bid tranches of this year's SOS procurement. The revised bid plans were vetted by the procurement improvement process stakeholders and no party objected. Accordingly, on behalf of the procurement improvement process stakeholders, Staff recommends that the Commission approve the revised PEPCO and PE bid plans. Representatives of both utilities are present to answer any questions you may have regarding the specifics of the proposed bid plan revisions.
Thank you for that, Mr. Spivak. Seeing no questions, one question.
Yeah, just
Commissioner
one
Blumer.
question. I think I know the answer, but can you confirm, were Montgomery County and Prince George's County both active in the Performance Improvement Plan Working Group?
Yes, they were.
Okay, thank you.
I would move that we approve the company's revised bid plans. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. The final item on the administrative meeting today is
Thank
with
you,
respect
Commissioner.
to case number 9690. This is the show cause hearing regarding SFE Energy Maryland Incorporated. We'll take a brief recess.